Hello, my guest today is Alan Kerr, who is a practicing Buddhist in Edinburgh, Scotland. Alan, I was wondering if you could describe for our viewers the different types of Buddhism that are practiced in the world.
Oh, is that all?
Yes.
Um,
How long is a piece of thread?
okay. Yeah, you better go and get some coffee. Well, seriously, see, Buddhism obviously began in what is now northern India, and it spread over the world. And Buddhism, when it reached another country, it took on the characteristics of the culture that was there before Buddhism. So Buddhism has different forms depending on which country it went to. Of course, there are fundamental Buddhist principles that are common to all different practices. But for example, you have the Buddhism in Japan, which is Zen Buddhism. You have the Chan Buddhism in China. You have Tibetan Buddhism. It was taken there in roughly the 6th century Common Era. Then Buddhism started moving west. You have the main schools of the Theravadan Buddhism, which is more monastic. You have the Tantrayanic, which is Tibetan, very much focused on deities and mantras. You have the Mahayana, which means the great vehicle, which came later. So you can take your pick. Of course, there are fundamental Buddhist principles, but Buddhism adapts to whichever country it goes to. You have Zen Buddhism, then you have transcendental meditation. So you can take your pick. It's all based on the fundamental Buddhist principles, but it adapts to the culture which it goes to. I hope that makes some kind of sense.
That is so interesting because I thought there were just two or three schools. There are multiple schools of thought. But
Legion.
am I correct that there are three universal truths of Buddhism?
There are four actually, Joe. You're close. 3 or 4 isn't bad.
All right.
Yeah, they're called the Four Noble Truths, and these are common to all schools of Buddhism. They're the fundamental building blocks of Buddhism. They're quite simple. There's nothing mysterious about them. The first Noble Truth says that we are suffering. If you're not suffering, then you're not living on this planet. You know, we just look around us. There is suffering in the world. It's there to see, and it's obvious. That's the first Noble Truth. The second Noble Truth is the cause of that suffering. And again, it's self-evident. It's us. We are causing suffering to the planet, the way we treat it. We are greedy, we are selfish. I'm not talking about individuals. Of course, individuals do fantastic things, but as a race, we humans, we are selfish. We want everything for ourselves. We take from the planet, and it causes the planet to suffer. The planet suffers, we suffer. That's the second Noble Truth. The third one is the good news. It's not all doom and gloom. The third Noble Truth is that there is a solution. It's not fatalistic. The fourth Noble Truth is the details of that solution. And that leads on to a path called the Eightfold Path that I won't go into, but it outlines the way out of suffering. So, Four Noble Truths.
Wonderful. So it's really a cycle, isn't it, of life,
Absolutely.
starting with the world is broken. You know, in my
Mhm.
faith of Judaism,
Yeah.
we have a similar belief. It's called tikkun olam, to repair the world. We
Yes.
believe the world is broken, and every day it's our obligation, commandment, if you will, to in some way try and repair the world. I want
Sure.
to ask you about the Buddhist temples. I've visited Buddhist temples in Thailand, at Sami Ling, here near Lockerbie,
Mm.
etc. If someone was to visit a Buddhist temple, what would they experience there?
Well, obviously, again, as in your first question, different cultures, temples and places of worship, slightly different form, but they all have one thing in common. They all have what we call the Rupa, the Buddha Rupa at the center. That's simply an image of the Buddha. It's not a god, it's not got any magical powers, it just It's here to remind us of the teaching of the Buddha. And all temples have that thing in common. You walk in, that's the first thing that you see. You may, again, according to the school of Buddhism, you may have images on the wall of Buddhist deities. And again, there's nothing mysterious about them. The deities embody certain qualities. You have the medicine Buddha, which is blue, symbolizing healing. You have the Amitabha Buddha, which glows red with compassion. These deities simply are embodiments of human principles and states of being. So you have these on the wall, and you always have flowers, candles, and incense. Three things, again, on the shrine. These are the three offerings we give to the Buddha: flowers, candles, and incense. So that's the things that all temples will have in common, with some little tweaks here and there.
And then is there any kind of an order of service, or does someone lead the meditations? How is it structured once you come into the temple?
Yes, again, it's similar to all faiths. There is an elder who begins the ritual. And in Buddhism, we begin by bowing to the Buddha. Again, we're not trying to insinuate that the Buddha has any special powers. It's just showing respect. We come in, we bow to the Buddha, just to acknowledge we're now starting something a little bit special. We normally light a candle and some incense, although recently, because of more and more allergies now among people, we tended to perhaps use different ways of creating that. But again, that's the three main things we do at the start of a ritual. We will chant some words, usually in Pali, simply because that's the language that the Buddha would have spoken. And we'll just say a few words in Pali, acknowledging and that we're now starting something special. And then we'll have some announcements about what's happening in the Buddhist Center over the next few days. And we'll then have a period of meditation, usually maybe 45 minutes to an hour, followed by a break. We can chat to other people, have a cup of tea. Then the second half is usually a teaching or discussion of some aspect of what we call the Dharma, which is simply the teaching of the Buddha. And that's how we spend the second half. We finish with a shorter meditation. And again, that's roughly the similar in most Buddhist centers.
It's so interesting because it's so similar to,
Absolutely.
again, my faith of Judaism, where we begin with bowing to the Torah, you know, not as if it's a God, but as if it's the words that we believe in, and so on. You mentioned Pali. Can you give me an example of a few words that you would chant at the beginning of a service?
Certainly. I can see them here because I'm sitting near a shrine in my home. So when I begin, I simply pay a homage to the Buddha. You know, Namo tassa bhagavato varahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato varahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato varahato samma sambuddhassa. There's nothing mysterious about that. It's simply saying in Pali, I'm acknowledging the Buddha, I'm grateful for his teaching, and I'm just so thankful to be sitting beside him and just doing this practice. And we begin with that. And at the end of the practice, we'll say something like Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sango Sangang Namami. Now, that only sounds a bit strange because it's not in English. But again, all I'm doing is acknowledging the three aspects of Buddhism, which is the Buddha, the Dharma, the teaching, and the Sangha, the congregation. Just the three things we acknowledge. That's common, again, to all schools of Buddhism.
How lovely. Well, I wonder, Alan, if someone who's watching this today wanted to explore Buddhism as their own practice, where do they begin?
You can take your pick, Joe. Every city every big city in the UK will have some kind of Buddhist organization. It may be the same one as me, which is the Triratna Buddhist Community. It may be the Theravadan community, which is more monastic. It can be the Zen Buddhism. They have a big priory in a place called Portobello in Edinburgh. You have the community of the Interbeing, whose head is Thich Nhat Hanh, a Vietnamese monk you may have heard of.
Yes.
You can take your pick. It's so simple. And it doesn't matter which one you go to. You know, you can try them all, find the one that suits you, and just they'll have introductory classes, and they're very welcoming. You can go
So there are
along.
lots of different portals, points of access.
Absolutely.
To this. Now, earlier you mentioned that your family was Buddhist. You grew up in the Buddhist philosophy, but a lot of children reject their parents' religions. What drew you to this practice throughout your life?
Yeah, like I said, obviously I make my own choice eventually. It's more a sense of people ask you, when did you become a Buddhist? It's more a sense of you wake up one day and you realize you are a Buddhist. You realize that the things that you are doing, the things that you believe in, the things you want to happen to the world, you suddenly discover, oh, that's what Buddhism says. Therefore, I must be a Buddhist. And sometimes terms like Buddhism and Buddhist can be a bit off-putting. The Buddha himself wouldn't call himself a Buddhist. He didn't want to start a religion, but we are where we are. So we have Buddhism. So it's more a sense of just suddenly realizing that what you are doing and what you believe in is Buddhism. So you end up continuing.
Right. Well, that's interesting. Well, that leads me to my last question today, Alan. What is the most remarkable discovery that you've made about Buddhism?
Oh gosh, Joe. Not so much about Buddhism, but more about humanity, especially during the recent time, during the lockdown, which we're now coming out of. Meditating during lockdown really brings you face to face with yourself, and there's no escape. And I've certainly found a few uncomfortable truths about myself during the lockdown, because there was nowhere else to go. It was just being here with yourself, with your practice. And I've discovered that I've got a lot of work to do. And I'm hoping that the intensity of my practice, which I had during the lockdown for obvious reasons, will continue now we're slowly coming out of it. I think this perhaps is a difficult time for all of us, because we've had the lockdown, but suddenly we're in an in-between state, what Tibetans might call a bardo state, between this life and that life. And I discovered that I've got a lot of hard work to do, but I'm looking forward to it.
Well, we're looking forward to learning more about the hard work that you and other members of the Buddhist community are doing in our country to help promote interfaith, to help all of the religions and those of no faith to work together for a better world. I have a feeling that we're all going to emerge from the pandemic as better people, having gone through, as you mentioned, this period of suffering, of trial and tribulation. We will learn a lot about ourselves, about our strengths, about our weaknesses as a human family, and hopefully it'll draw us closer together. Thank you on behalf of the Edinburgh Interfaith Association for drawing close to us this week and sharing with us these important and I would say immortal principles of the Buddha and Buddhism.
Well,
thank you again.
Thank you, Joe, for doing this. It's been a privilege. I don't have any answers to anything, but it's such a privilege just to be in the company of you and other people here. And I hope we can do it again sometime.
Thanks again. Cheers.
Bye.